no money down real estate deal and sitting at the closing table, and you just slide out. As I see this now when people go through the EPIC program on acquiring businesses and they've acquired their first business, and you get this smile that's like, I just can't believe that you can do this. And it's a goofy smile that I see on everybody that does their first deal. And like, I still remember that from the first time that I was able to do it with a piece of real estate. So using the combination of what I found about the possibility of acquiring real estate with no money down, and then the actuality of these Wall Street firms that are doing these things called leverage buyouts, acquiring companies, using the company's assets to pay for themselves, I was like, this is something that is kind of magical. And if you squish those two things together, if you smash the no money down real estate concept with the leverage buyout concept, that's really the genesis of my journey into this world. So how did I get into this? Just so you have a little bit of background on who you're talking to or who's trying to share this stuff with you, I think it's good to have a little bit of information on kind of how did I get involved in this, and what is my journey in this ethical profits in crisis world, in this acquisition of businesses environment. What has that been that causes me to be able to have some knowledge to share with you? So, well, I'm glad that you ask. I've had really 5 major, what I would call epic opportunities, these ethical profits in crisis. And the pictures that you see on the slide is kind of me over the years from high school all the way up to interviews with Richard Branson, Sir Richard Branson, and all the steps along the way. And what I did was basically my first real understanding and encounters with this world of acquiring businesses happened back in the 1980s. So in 1981 and 1982, I had the good fortune to be introduced to some people in New York at some securities firms. I had my securities license to basically raise money and sell investments. And I was able to learn a lot about something that was very popular in the 1980s called the leverage buyout. Now, that's really important because I was really blessed to have kind of come into this world about that time, right? And I'm in the 17, 18 years old around that time. Well, what was happening was you were hearing everywhere that these big business deals were happening, and companies were able to buy other companies using the assets of the companies that they were buying, right? That's called a leverage buyout. A leverage buyout basically is when you go out and you find a company that you want to buy and you see that there is enough equity and value there to be able to, and it might be in the form of just the valuation of the company, the stock of the company, could be the assets of the company, could be intellectual property, could be unrealized opportunities. But you see that existing in that company, you have the ability to borrow enough cash to pay for the company using its assets as collateral, right? That's the heart and soul of the leverage buyout. So when I was watching this happening, I was like, my gosh, you mean like these people are buying these companies with no money? That's lots of cash changing hands, but there's no money that's really coming out of the pockets of the people who are buying. So what's really cool about that, I thought, was you mean that you can buy billion-dollar companies without actually having to have the billions of dollars? Because if you've got the right connections on Wall Street, people will loan you the money, and it's not being loaned really to you as much as it's being loaned based on the value of this company. Well, that was amazing to me. And I think that it really framed the concept of the possibility of the no money out of pocket deal for me. And so I had also had experience as a real estate agent seeing that it was possible to acquire real estate with no money down. And if any of you have ever done a deal where you acquire real estate with no money down, it's kind of life-changing. You sit at the table and the person is signing the deed to the property over to you, the title to the property over to you, and they hand it to you. And now you own this property, and you paid no money for it. You now own the equity in the property, and maybe usually there's a loan on the property, and they're still on the loan. You're not on the loan. You didn't get a loan. You just now have acquired this property. And I've got to give a shout out to Robert Allen, who wrote a book called Nothing Down. My dad shared that book with me when I was a kid, and I was like, my gosh, that is amazing that you can do that. And then I did my first no money down real estate deal, and sitting at the closing table, and you just slide out. As I see this now when people go through the EPIC program on acquiring businesses, and they've acquired their first business, and you get this smile that's like, I just can't believe that you can do this. And it's a goofy smile that I see on everybody that does their first deal. And I still remember that from the first time that I was able to do it with a piece of real estate. So using the combination of what I found about the possibility of acquiring real estate with no money down, and then the actuality of these Wall Street firms that are doing these things called leverage buyouts, acquiring companies, using the company's assets to pay for themselves, I was like, this is something that is kind of magical. And if you squish those two things together, if you smash the no money down real estate concept with the leverage buyout concept, that's really the genesis of my journey into this world where you can acquire companies with no money out of pocket. So seeing those two things and having that experience, my first leverage buyout deal I was involved with was with one of those New York firms, and we acquired a company that was a manufacturing company, and that was done using a leverage buyout. And so that was like, okay, that's really, really cool. Now, at this point, I had a leverage buyout and I had no money down real estate in my pocket. And what I found was that the great opportunities always exist. And I'll explain to you why they always exist when we get a little bit farther in. One of the reasons is that as there are depressions in the economy, and there are mild and severe depressions in the economy constantly. I think in the last 100 years in the United States alone, we've had almost 50 recessions. So figure that's averages like one every 2 years. But there are also depressions and opportunities within each of the spans between those periods. So in the 90s, there was another opportunity where I was able to do workouts in the retail space. And then as we moved into 2000, that was like turnarounds, workouts and turnarounds for companies that were in trouble. As I went into the recession that happened around the dot-com bust in 2000 and 2001, I had the opportunity to do reorganizations of these dot-com companies. And that was back, if anybody remembers, there was this big thing called Y2K and the whole world's going to end. And that panic created a lot of hype, that it boosted a whole bunch of companies that thought all they had to do was get eyeballs at any cost and then you'll make money. No real logical leap between getting the eyeballs and making the money, but they just figured if they had them, it would work out. Turned out it didn't. And so there was an opportunity there for me to do a lot of reorganizations for companies. When we got into the Great Recession here in the United States, that was the subprime lending crisis that happened in 2007, 8, and 9. I had the opportunity to go back to my roots of real estate and do roll-ups, and so acquire several properties and bundle them together. And then as we move into 22 and beyond, I have found that between things that happened with the coronavirus pandemic in 2020-21, moving into 22, things that were going on in the world, crises that we're having with people invading other countries, and all of the other just general things, inflation going higher, there's always opportunity. There's always opportunity in crisis, right? You can go on one side and you have the opportunity, you can go on the other side and you've got devastation. So I think the important thing to take away is that experiencing no money down real estate, leverage buyouts, then workouts, seeing how I could actually go into a company and kind of turn things around and make a company that was worth X actually be worth 5X by figuring out how to manipulate some of the things in the company and tweak a few things, kind of like dial in the combination. Somebody used the analogy of that when if you think about an old radio, not a digital one, but you can do it on digital too, that if you're just adjusting the frequency up a little tiny bit, it gets kind of fuzzy and it's kind of hard to understand what they're saying. And then as you dial it in, it gets crystal clear. That's really what was happening to me on this journey. So now workouts, I'm learning on how can I take a company and add a whole bunch of value. Reorganization, same thing. When there's some things that just aren't perfect, how can I tweak these things? Then roll-ups was a whole new concept where you could take several companies in one industry or one vertical, or even just several companies to bundle together in a package called a portfolio. Then those companies could be worth significantly more because you're pooling them and you're able to get their profits and their sales up over certain levels where you get bigger players that are interested in them. That was a really cool concept too.